The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks go to Salt Lake City and emerge victorious, but it was never easy.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast.
A 124-121 victory on the road in Utah to snap a 3-game losing streak for Atlanta. It was never easy. They were up pretty decently big in the first half. 16 points was the largest lead for Atlanta on a night without Jalen Johnson. And as I've covered in depth, and Hawks fans definitely know this, that nothing is a given right now for the Hawks without Jalen Johnson, when they struggled pretty badly without him. But he didn't play in this game, and the Hawks were able to get a win on the road. That is the rosy, optimistic framing of this game. It's a road win. Yes, it's a bad opponent. That's definitely worth acknowledging at some point in the podcast, but it's a road win, and there's nothing easy about that in the NBA. In the second half, it was all incredibly close. In fact, the Hawks, after leading big in that first half, never led by more than 7 points in the second half. They trailed several times in the second half, and it was a 5-point game or less on both sides for the entire fourth quarter. And then down the stretch, Utah actually had a heroic shot from Colin Sexton that tied the game in the final seconds, except for Trae decided to walk it off in memorable, artistic fashion. Trae was certainly the biggest story of this game even before that, with a 2020 game, his third of the season. But the walk-off made that all irrelevant. So, no matter what happens in the NBA, you win a game, it matters. I will give you all the context, all the nuance, all the detail on this podcast, but broadly speaking, the Hawks needed to win this game. I am not one that would ever assign must win to any game in January of an NBA season, ever. And I would have told you that win or lose today. But it's a game where the Hawks probably needed to win. Like, they're on this road trip. You don't want to suddenly go, lose 4 games in a row, have a tough one coming up on Thursday as well. This is the quote-unquote easier game on the West Coast trip, and they win it. So that's the broad takeaway from the night. But as far as how this game unfolded, it was a good offensive game for the Hawks. It wasn't an elite one. It wasn't unforgettable offensively, except for the game winner again by Trae. And his individual play was tremendous in this game. But they had a 123 offensive rating. Like, they were really, really efficient along the way. They were just okay inside the arc. They were 18 of 44 from 3, which is quite good for this Hawks team, 41% on pretty good volume. And the big thing is they had 35 assists and only 10 turnovers. And I sort of noticed in my quick preview on the show on Tuesday, sort of Monday into Tuesday, but the Jazz are the worst turnover and differential team in the league. They turn the ball over a lot on offense and do not force a lot of turnovers defensively. And the Hawks didn't totally demolish them in that area, but they were +6 in turnover margin in this game. That was not a small thing in sort of pulling off this victory. And really, the Hawks only really had one bad ball security quarter. The third quarter, it was a little bit of a hiccup there. But in the game, only 10 giveaways. That's an excellent, excellent figure after the Hawks have struggled so badly to protect the ball in recent days. They get to the line a lot in this one. They were kind of passive at times, but not too much to complain about offensively, other than the bench was a little bit spotty for most of the night. But they did get 4 threes out of the bench in the fourth quarter that were definitely big at the time. And it's kind of funny. The first half, the Hawks were just tremendous in the possession game. They didn't shoot it incredibly well before halftime, but they only had 2 turnovers, and they were really good on the offensive glass as well. So they just won on the margins in that first half. In the second half, the margins kind of slipped, but they made more shots. They made more threes, and that kind of papered over. I think they actually made 11 threes in the second half on a pretty good rate. So overall, like, Trae was the headliner, obviously, and we'll get into this more later on when I talk about individual players, but 24 points, 20 assists, and 2 turnovers for Trae. He was awesome in this one, but he wasn't alone. The Hawks offensively were really balanced. They had 7 guys in double figures, 8 guys with 9 points or more for Atlanta. Only Okongwu, of the 9 guys who played, scored fewer than 9 points for the Hawks. So a pretty good balanced game. Trae's making everybody look good with his passing, as he often does. And offensively, again, it wasn't perfect, but not too much to complain about on that end of the floor. Now, defensively, it was not particularly impressive, both in the eye test and in the stats. They had a 120 defensive rating in a game against a team that's not terrible offensively. They're better on offense than defense this year in Utah, but still. And the Jazz did make some shots. I'll say that. They actually shot 19 of 48 from 3, even with a rough second half shooting for Utah. They were really hot early in this one. And Lauri Markkanen ends this game with 35 points on 24 shooting possessions, which is really good. And, the Hawks allowed 40 3-point attempts. That's actually just too many in general, too many open ones, I thought, for the Hawks defense on the perimeter. And Markkanen is a very good player. I don't think he's a superstar player, but he's a really good player. And if you watch him closely, he is a pure play finisher. What I mean is he doesn't really pass. He's not a creator for other people. He's not a huge creator like off the bounce. He is a great shooter who happens to be 6'11", 7 feet tall, and a good finisher around the rim when he needs to be. And that was evidence here. He had 35 points and 1 assist in this game. And that's the scouting report. That's not out of the ordinary for the Hawks to have seen this from Markkanen. And yeah, it's tough to guard him at his size. I think if Jalen had played, it would have been Jalen's matchup a lot of the night. So that's at least notable too. But the Hawks allowed him to get wherever he wanted to in this game far too often. And yeah, he made a lot of shots. But still, the Hawks just not quite good enough on the perimeter at times. I thought Hunter really struggled defensively in this game. Ricochet did fine, but not like a game-changing performance for him defensively. Then you throw in Bogey, you throw in Garrison Matthews. Like, they had some defensive issues along the way. And with Dyson being by far the best defender, Dyson is not really well-suited to guarding Lauri Markkanen. Like, you could put him on him, but it's not going to use Dyson's strengths. You need one of your bigger forwards to do this, and they didn't really have that guy in this game. So I thought Zach did the best job overall, but that was probably the biggest weakness individually defensively in this game. The strength on defense was actually at the rim. The Jazz end this game with 38 points in the paint. That's a really, really low number. They shot 44% on twos and only 47.8% at the rim. That is a very, very low number. So credit to Capella and Okongwu in particular, rim protecting in this game. I thought the centers were really good defensively most of the night. There were some hiccups in the fourth quarter. I thought Clint was not the best in the fourth necessarily, but before that, I thought they were both really good defensively in this game. Offensively, Okongwu had a night to forget, honestly. But defensively, the two of them combined for, I think it was 7 blocks in this one. They rebounded the ball well most of the night. And, just good defense at the point of attack. And, not the point of attack, at the back line. Point of attack, not so good in this game other than Dyson. As a team, the Hawks blocked 11 shots. So rim protection was not the issue. It was more of the perimeter stuff. And look, they navigated this one. Old pal Patty Mills has a season high 13 points off the bench for Utah. It was like that kind of night in some respects. And credit to the Jazz, they were actually pretty, I thought, versatile and like resilient to come back from being down big early on a team that's not going anywhere. They're well coached by Will Hardy. It was a physical game as well, which kind of probably favored them, I thought, overall. But look, one more time here before we sort of get into more of the details in this game. This is one of those nights where I always say on the podcast for a reason, it's not easy to win on the road, especially earlier in the season. Like, yeah, in April, some teams are just done and they might roll over for you. The Jazz played hard in this game, and you're on the road without Jalen. And the Hawks, I think, even including this game, especially before this game, the Hawks were still like minus 13 net rating with Jalen off the floor this year. Like, they're not a good team without Jalen. That's just kind of where they are right now. But to go on the road, get a win, Trae was awesome, and that's kind of where you leave this one. So we'll get into how it unfolded with more detail in a second. But a win is a win is a win was what I would say. Even if the Hawks had some frustrating moments, it wasn't the best coach game, I didn't think, from Quinn Snyder. Like, there's stuff to get to that I'll touch on later on. But hey, it's a win, and it's a skid-busting victory for the Hawks as well.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Welcome back, Zion Williamson.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast.
Zion Williamson's performance. The raw stats look good. In under 30 minutes of action, under 28 minutes of action, 27 minutes, 40 seconds to be exact, 22 points on 9 of 15 shooting, 4 of 9 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 4 turnovers, 3 fouls. Overall, that's a really good stat line. And immediately from when he stepped on the court for his warm-up, you could tell he was going to play pretty well. He looked in shape. He was moving pretty good as well. One other thing that's worth mentioning is Zion Williamson last year before games often didn't warm up, just wasn't something that he did. The few games that he played earlier this year, he did warm up. He warmed up before this game. You should probably warm up before every game. That's not something that I think is particularly great that he didn't do in the past, but look, maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know. But he warmed up before this one, and the way he was moving, the way he just physically looked, you're like, oh yeah, that dude looks good. Like, he just physically looks good. If you want to be concerned about his weight, there's nothing to be concerned about. He looked that good right now. And it translated to production on the court. This is someone who has not played in 2 months. His last game was November 6th. This game was played on January 7th. So a little bit over 2 months, by like a day here. And he looked really good. To not have played basketball, like competitive basketball, in that long, 5-on-5 is one thing in practice, but you're not going as hard as you might in a game. You're not having to change of direction exactly like you do. There's probably a little bit more breaks in between and everything like that. To play like he did was pretty awesome. Look, there were moments when he looked winded. He looked gassed at the end of the first half. Looked absolutely gassed, and that's to be expected. I don't think that's a negative thing here. Game shape is different than going through practices, doing cardio, and all of that. He looked fantastic in this one, truthfully. And I don't know. It's one of those games that makes you go like, oh yeah, you can't give up on this player just yet. This is the game that says you got to keep trying to build around him as long as you can. Maybe it's not with Zion. Maybe it's not with Ingram. Maybe it's not with CJ. But Zion's got to be the core, the main guy going forward, because the talent is absolutely there. Look, he was good defensively in this game. They were picking on him for the first couple of possessions, and then he settled right in, got some of those nerves out, and played particularly well. You saw that nose for the ball. If you're a longtime listener to the show, and every dayer for a long time, from when they drafted him, and that's something that I'd said, he's just got an incredible instinct on when to go for steals and go for the ball. And you saw that. It led to a 360 windmill dunk from him that looked awesome. He had an alley-oop play as well. He was just trying hard. You saw the Zion touch, right? Like, this is a guy that finishes like a Kyrie Irving, finishes like a guard, and does not finish at the rim with the layup package that he has, like a big man. And you saw that on full display, the touch off the glass, high off the glass, bouncing in, knowing how to like contort his body and put English on the ball to get it into the hoop. You saw everything that makes you be like, yeah, this was the number one overall pick, and this can be a really special player. Now, there's an asterisk with that. We'll get to that in the next segment here. But you also saw what he did for DeJounte Murray in this game. Was this DeJounte Murray's best game as a Pelican? The answer is probably yes, right? 12 of 20 from the field. That's 60%. 29 points on 20 shot attempts. I can't tell you the last time DeJounte had a game above 50% shooting. It feels like it's been forever, or like not at all this season. He looked like a different player with Zion Williamson out there. And while I don't really like the idea that Zion Williamson is the guy that like unlocks DeJounte Murray, it feels like he should do that himself. The last game that he shot above 50% from the field was back on December 15th. He's only done it three times this season. That's not great. And he looked like a completely different player in this game. Where'd the rest of his stats go? 29 points, 6 assists, 6 steals, a block, and just 2 turnovers. Zion draws double teams, and you saw Rudy Gobert and another big constantly trying to shade Zion Williamson. They were terrified of him. Look what it did for the rest of the team. This is one of those games, and we'll talk more about this in the third segment, that if they had Trey Murphy, things would look completely different. They shot 12 of 41 from 3. They took 41 threes with Zion out there, which is saying something. Even DeJounte took 8 threes, didn't make them, 2 of 8, but took them. 12 of 41. You can get that number up to 36%, so 4 more made threes. This is an entirely different game, and the Pelicans probably win. This is the Zion effect, and this is why he is so tantalizing of a prospect, of a player, that you look at games like this, and you're like, oh yeah, this guy can lead us to great success. Imagine him if he'd been playing the whole time, then he comes into this game, in game shape, doing what he did. Mike, they would have won. You know this. This was an encouraging game because of how Zion Williamson played. This is why you can't give up on someone like that, even if it kind of makes sense to do so. But, and there is a big but with this. This is the asterisk, right? It's not just tantalizing, it's a polarizing player. Because it was one game. Because he hadn't played since November 6th. The injuries. The maybe not always being the most professional. We're talking about Zion's really good performance, return from injury. Again, 2 months off, and he looked that good. And it's like, that's the type of game that goes like, yeah, like, can you give up on Zion when he's under contract? And the answer is probably no. Like, this is the type of game that makes you be like, cool, we're gonna trade BI. That was already the plan. We'll move CJ if we need to, but we're not going to give up on Zion and do a complete rebuild just yet. And I don't think they need to do that. I don't think you at least need to make that determination right now. But one game is not enough to make me go like, yeah, no, you don't ever trade him. He's untouchable or anything like that. He just missed 2 months. That's terrible, right? Like, that's not what you want. And it feels like with Zion, there is always something. He has one season of his career last year where he played over 70 games. He has one other season where he played 61 games in a shortened season, so that looks pretty good there too. So of the 5 years that he played, there's going to basically be 2 seasons where he's played more than 60 games is kind of what we're assuming. I don't know if he's going to play tonight against the Portland Trailblazers. Willie Green wouldn't answer that question before this game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Said, let's see how he plays and let's just focus on this game and then we'll figure out tomorrow's game when we get to that, which is a valid thing to do. But he easily could miss this game. So all of that time missed. He's only played 190 games in now 6 seasons, right? That's not good enough. So this is why I said he's tantalized. It's like, it's right there. He can be so good. But also polarizing because, yeah, he misses a ton of time. And to quote the great Mike Detillier of WWL and the Saints and all that, the best ability is availability, and he has not proven that. We thought last year was going to be the new norm, 70 games, looking great, right? And then this year missed 2 months. Now, he returned from that injury, that hamstring injury, this one, pretty well. He looked good. Did not look out of shape, looked in shape. It was about 8 weeks, which is kind of what we thought it was going to be. I didn't think he was going to play in this game. He did. That's an encouraging sign too. So this is literally just the first step to proving it. The remainder of the regular season for Zion Williamson becomes about proving it. And the Pelicans need to see that too. As good as he looked in this game, and he looked good, he did. There's no denying that. You're not going to be like, this is the franchise savior again after one game. We got to see this type of performance every single game that he plays going forward, in my opinion. Maybe not. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the general sentiment of what I'm trying to say. He's got to show it. He's still in prove it mode. You want the team to build around you, Zion? Well, then you've got to earn it, right? Okay, go and do it. Go out and play it and show it that you are a franchise player. Once he does that, we can enter the offseason and have different discussions. But every game, we are going to really analyze how he played. Like down to the minute detail, because that's what you got to do. The future of the franchise kind of hinges on all of that. This is the pivot point when it comes to it. If he continues to play like that and gets better, unlocks DeJounte Murray, even if Murray should have been playing better, that's a really encouraging sign. Okay, we believe again. Maybe we'll get hurt. Absolutely. Good chance of that when it comes to him. But at least you feel better about that decision going forward, and that's an important thing. So this was a good first step. If he had come out and played lackluster, just didn't look like the Zion we wanted to see, honestly, that would have been a big concern in my mind. Now, he could have eased that by kind of getting into game shape and playing himself into it and playing better as the season went on. But overall, you needed to see what you saw from him in this game. Cool. Box checked. There's a bunch more boxes, though. And he needs to show that. More than that, he needs to warm up every game. I honestly think that should be the case. Like, no more let's be lazy or anything like that. Like, if you want this, Zion, It's here for the taking, but you've got to commit to. No more just relying on the pure talent. It's time to be a true professional. I think he's improved on that over the years. We've seen Zion 1.0, then 2.0, 3.0. I don't know what 0.0 we're on right now, but it feels like 4 or 5. It's time to show it. It's time for this to be the one where we go, cool, we don't need a Zion 6.0 because 5.0 is what we want. So it's time to do that. And if there's another injury that comes up that keeps him out for extended period of time, or he just doesn't have it, or it looks like, he's focused on social life and other things. And look, I don't know. He might not be. Could be, though. Who knows? But you've got to do the right things, essentially. Right? Look, the fan base isn't on Zion's side anymore. Like, he used up all the goodwill that he had, that his talent provided him. It's time to be the professional and just do it going forward. Warm up before the games. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for it when I'm at the home games, right? Do that. Show that you are putting in the work to be the player that this franchise wants you to be, that these fans want you to be, that you, listener, want him to be. You deserve that. You deserve NBA players that act like professionals. And I don't think we can 100, we can't say, it's not, I don't think, we can't say that Zion has done that his whole career. I don't think it's been as bad as some people want to make it out to be. But overall, it's time for him to be the guy. This was a good first step, in my opinion. He's not looked like this returning from injuries before. So we've got a real good first step, but it's only a first step. It needs to be a second step, third step, fourth step, and so on. I think he's capable of doing it. We'll see. The franchise right now in a non-pressure filled environment, which is what this is in a wonderful position to be like, okay, we can lose games, but as long as he's playing well, as long as our starters are playing well, and the starters played well in this game, right? Overall, those guys were pretty good. Herb was a plus. Zion was a plus. Messi in a really tough matchup for him was only a -2. CJ was bad. More on him in the next second. -15. DeJounte was -1. Overall, the starters did a pretty good job, in my opinion. Not perfect, but for a team with no chemistry there, running a lineup that has literally not played together at all, they did a good enough job. They were in position to win this game late. They got it done with defense, among other things, too. It's the first step, though. It's a good first step. Let's see the second. Tonight, I don't know if Zion's playing. We'll see. But if he is, let's see the second step. If not, Friday against the 76ers, let's see the second step or third step, hopefully. It's time for all of that to become a reality with this franchise. So that's what he needs to show going forward. Be a professional. Be reliable. Be there. And if he does that, we're going to be singing his praises again going into the offseason. The fan base will be behind him again. Because look, the wins and losses don't matter, but show that you can play. We'll find out. TBD here.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Looking at the wild card round, the Vikings are slight favorites on the road against the Rams. They're falling hard to the Lions. The Vikings, they got to go to LA now as the 5 seed. Get Minnesota favored by 1.5. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Celtics get the win in Denver, finished the road trip strong right off the bat. The Celtics came out hot, 15-point lead in the first quarter. That went away in the second quarter. And I think there was some, look, it wasn't great. It was not the most fluid game. This was not a start to finish kind of wow, what a great game. It is a really good win for the Boston Celtics. Regardless, look, it's the end of a long road trip. They got a win. They finished strong in altitude. It's always tough. It's why Denver generally has a really good home court advantage. They had their moments where they didn't look great, but they snapped out of it. And so it is a good win and a strong finish. And the thing with not having Jokic, a couple of guys said it after the game, they play differently without Jokic. And it's very easy to say, you look at the Nuggets and go, oh, well, they are this with Jokic. They're plus $1 million with Jokic and minus $1 million without him. It's not the same exact thing and they didn't have Aaron Gordon either, but it's not the same thing because those non-Jokic minutes when he plays are like bench units. And this was more of the starting unit. And it's not the exact same guys who are on the floor in those non-Jokic minutes. And Porzingis said it. I think Tatum said it. They do play a different style, and they played free. They shot a bunch. They, I think, had like a little bit of an outlier shooting night. I say a little bit of an outlier shooting night. Russell Westbrook was 4 of 7 from 3. So that is the ultimate, or 4 of 9 from 3. That is the ultimate outlier shooting night. They shot 14 of 36. For a while there, they were shooting somewhere north of like 40%. The Celtics lose the 3-point battle again, actually, and only shoot 35, by the way. This was, people are talking about how they shoot 45 and 50 and whatever per game. They only shot 35 because they had 60 points in the paint. And that's another, I think, product of no Jokic there and no Gordon. They were able to get to the paint easily. They were able to finish inside easily. Kristaps Porzingis was able to do that very well. He had 15 points in the first quarter and was very clearly the best Porzingis performance that we've seen since he's come back. It's not a huge sample size, but without Jokic there, it did allow Porzingis to take advantage of a lot of mismatches and to go against guys that maybe he could use. I don't want to say strength. Look, Porzingis is big. He's not the strongest dude in the world. He gets pushed off his spot. There's a reason why his post-ups are as high as they are. Part of it is by design. Part of it is, he doesn't like hold his position extraordinarily well on the blocks, right? He's not a traditional post-up player. His post-up numbers are different, but he was able to take advantage of some of the mismatches. And, if Jokic was in there defending him, it wouldn't have been the same type of Porzingis performance. Would he have still scored 15 in the first quarter? Hard to say. Who knows? Maybe. But the Celtics were able to go to that early. He was able to set a tone early. Jason Tatum was there with him, scoring 11 in the first quarter. So it was basically Tatum and Porzingis, and Horford hit a couple of shots, but notably Jaylen Brown was scoreless in the first half. No, actually not scoreless in the first half. Scoreless in the first quarter. He had 2 free throws in the second quarter, so he didn't hit a basket in the first half. Only 2 points at halftime. So it was all Tatum, all Porzingis. The second quarter was where things got a little slippery for Boston. Jamal Murray, credit to him. That was vintage Jamal Murray. I'm sure there are people in Denver who are looking at that like, hey, whoa, can we bottle that second quarter Jamal Murray and get that all the time? Because that would be very helpful for the Denver Nuggets. I think there are a couple of things going on defensively. Like I don't think they were very crisp. I think they were very, very much ignoring Russell Westbrook. I think they were okay with certain guys shooting 3-pointers, and those guys started to make 3-pointers, especially Westbrook. And, they got a little discombobulated. They didn't play Murray with the kind of physicality that they needed to. He kind of got to his spots and he hit some tough shots. He hit some really tough shots, and that got him going. And that got, I think, the whole team going confidence-wise. In the third quarter, Jaylen Brown was able to not only wake up in the third quarter offensively, but also he started to defend Murray a lot more closely, outright denying him. So that was a nice adjustment in the second half. Third quarter, Jaylen Brown was awesome. 4 of 4, no 3-point attempts, 8 points in the quarter for him. Now, Jalen, I should mention, in the first half, even though he only had those 2 points, he did end up with 5 assists, and that was that came a little bit later in the second quarter. He had 3 of those assists. It wasn't his best quarter necessarily. That was a stretch there in that second quarter where Joe Mazzulla went with Neemias Queta, and of course, Queta had a tough few minutes. I'm like, this isn't working. This is a tough stretch for him. This is not a good choice. And then as soon as I said this is not a good choice, Queta scored 4 buckets in a row. He had a 2-3 minute stretch where it was like, oh, okay, then I'm just going to shut up now. So, but that stretch there was where Jalen and Queta kind of woke up a little bit, and the Celtics lost that quarter by 12. It could have been worse, actually. So that was an important stretch there to set the tone there for a second half where the Celtics were able to string some, get a little bit of a run together. They won the quarter by 5. The Nuggets shooting cooled off. The Celtics were again attacking the rim, 20 points in the paint in that quarter. They were starting to get out in transition a little bit. Couple of steals, couple of big rebounds. Drew Holiday finding Tatum and Brown in transition a couple of times.